Tyler Wogenstahl with us today. You have all sorts of titles, responsibilities. You just mentioned before we came on, it's like, man, I just put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and it felt really good. You have all these roles and jobs. I'm assuming you don't get to do that very often.
No, I don't. Trying to figure out how to stay connected when you need to connect and disconnect is definitely a challenge, and it's something I'm trying to get better at.
How in the heck at 38 years old are you trying to get better at that?
Well, I think when you start companies and you have people who work for you, you try to coach them in ways that they're going to do a good job at work, but also have meaningful and fulfilling personal lives. And when you're trying to coach people to say, hey, I think this is a good way to do it, and then you have somebody in your office say, but you never take a day off, you start thinking to yourself, you're like, well, how do we do this? How do we get better at that?
Yeah.
And I think now with it's kind of funny. It doesn't matter if it's your iPhone or Do Not Disturb or an Apple Watch. On days that I don't have as much going on, I kind of manage those things a little bit differently. From what type of watch do you wear that doesn't vibrate your wrist, to how do I figure out to make sure that I set a notification that allows me to give people the time and attention they deserve. And I think that's one thing that probably a lot of people have a hard time with right now is, how do I just focus on what I'm doing in the moment, as opposed to worrying about what's going on with a phone call, a text message, an email, whatever that may be, right?
I think it's a battle. We know it's not probably good for our health. It's probably not good for our stress. It's not good for blood pressure. But it's really tough when you have things happening that are important, that so many people are relying on you. It's tough to make that decision to know, like, hey, I need to intentionally shut this off, either to be in this moment now or to give myself some space, because for highly competitive people, which usually people that start businesses and entrepreneurs are, that are really driven to do a really good stinking job at whatever the heck they need to do, it's tough to have this willingness to shut it off. Like, have you gotten better at that?
No, I haven't. I think I haven't figured out how to master that piece of it yet. And I think we all get conditioned and trained on how to do things. And when I first started off in the hospitality business and I was running maybe one location or multiple locations, one of my jobs was to be responsive and to get back to people and answer those questions, right? And it was something that I actually had owners of companies, kind of yell at me about. They're like, hey, you have to make sure you're answering your phone and you're responding to people, in a reasonable time frame. So as I, kind of climbed the ladder and, went from a GM to a multi-unit person to a director to a vice president, it was my job to be responsive. And I was actually in a meeting, a boardroom meeting with an owner of a company, a big company, and he was going through asking everybody, how do they stay organized? How do they get so much done? And he ended up coming to me and he was saying, hey, Tyler, your region's always doing really well. You have a good retention rate. What's your secret? I said, well, I just really manage everything based on my calendar and my email. And, when people send me a response, a question, whatever it may be, I make sure that, I use that to kind of guide my day and knock out these tasks. And he said, well, that's really unfortunate. And I, was kind of thrown off by it. And he said, you allow other people to dictate how you're going to spend your day and your time. And that kind of resonated with me. And it's resonated with me for a couple of years. And as I have multiple projects going on now, I think you try to figure out the best way to spend your time and how to appropriately address certain things, to where there's things that you want to do and things you have to do. And I kind of, right now, I really enjoy creating things and trying to figure out ways to, better the lives of our teams and, how do we make our businesses grow. But then there's still times that you have to go back there and do the fun stuff, the bookkeeping and the accounting and legal and HR. So there's a balance there. And I think it's getting the balance. I think that's full circle, the conversation from the phones to alerts to your emails. It's how do we achieve that good balance?
Do you think it's, because that's a term that always comes to my mind too, balance. Do you think it's needing to find a balance, or do you just have to find a way to just interweave everything into all of our days? Like, what do you think it is? Like, it's not even any pushback around it, because the term was always balance in my mind. But I'm like, guys, I can't find balance. Like a true balance so I have to find a way to make it all work, because I'm heading to the Outer Banks tomorrow morning and spending the week. It's the same week every year and stuff, but the stuff's going with me. There'll be time for some books, but it's not vacation the way a lot of people want vacation to be. And so I have to find a way to weave it into everything on vacation. So I don't know. I mean, do you think balance is it, or is it we got to find a way to make all these things happen and accomplish them all?
I think ultimately we are responsible for our commitments. So what we take on, we have to find a way to get that done. And rather that's learning to be, get comfortable being uncomfortable, or figuring out a way to provide or to create better automations, better systems, have the right people in place who can kind of handle these things as well. I think as organizations grow and your workload grows, essentially you have to have people who can do the things you need to get done, and you have to trust in those people. And I think that takes time. I think that's bottom line. It takes time to build an organization and build people around you that you're going to trust to say, you know what, this person's got it. They're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a certain, from my standpoint, from somebody who was heavily in operations to where now, I own, a couple different businesses, you have to give people a little bit of rope, but not too much to where they're going to sink. So it's a balancing act.